This year we've got a 37-year-old coming on board, and they get trained in mission, practical mission, and also trained in evangelism and sharing the faith, and study in the classroom as well. They do like 9 months with us and then go out and practically share their faith, and you see them grow hugely over that year. We also have our advanced evangelism training groups, which started in Andy's office with 12 younger guys and him, and he started to invest in them, in what it is to share your faith, what it is to be an evangelist. Let's hold each other accountable on the gospel that we're sharing. What started as one group and then went on to say to these young guys, will you go and find guys around you and create your own groups, is now 11,000 groups in 93 nations on earth, some in some of the most unreached places on earth, and the stories coming from that is incredible. The final area of our mission is community transformation. Our Eden teams have seen 850 people choose to move downwardly mobile into the most deprived areas of the UK. And it's a calling, it's eye-opening. I've done it myself, it was daunting. God called me to the place that I drove around as a single mum and said, I will never live there. And 8 years later, God broke my heart for that area, and I found myself absolutely loving it. Because when God calls us, he equips us and he gives us a heart for it. We've also got our community groceries that provide the wraparound care as well as low-cost food and support to these families. We've got 21 community groceries around the UK that look after 45,000 member families. We're just going to watch this video. It's been 30 years of the Message Trust, and last year we created this video that just tells you a bit of the journey. If you've journeyed with the message over the years, you'll recognise Andy with hair, Worldwide Message Tribe, Andy in a green shell suit. It's not a good sight, but watch the screen.
Who are we? We are gospel-centered art with one vision, mission. In schools, on stages, on the streets, and in prisons. We are a movement of the unashamed, untamed, unconventional, unshaken truth that has one name, Jesus. We are kingdom community spelled one word, Eden. Might catch us in an office building 9 to 5, then on the corner of your neighborhood 5 to 9. Because this is more than comfortable living, it's 24/7 life online. It says, I will live for this cause rather than mine. We are broken people with a united cause, an undivided love in a divided society proclaiming Jesus is Lord. More than performances for applause, we are community to the fractured and the poor. Where ex-drug dealers find freedom in Christ, where suicide runs to hide, where death turns to life, where the local thief becomes the urban hero, where 100 crimes become 0. We are transformed lives, transforming lives. We are God-shaped enterprise, where ex-prisoners and addicts find their home and become more than ever dreamed or hoped. Because in a world saying, I can't do it, we say, yes you can. You can take a stand, find who you're meant to be, discover your identity in the Maker's plan. Because we won't sit back whilst the generation dies. We advance through your city proclaiming real life. We train up the next generation to effectively proclaim Christ. We are a movement of laid down lives, refusing to hide. We go beyond music and take people higher. We're not about fame or being admired. From the ones and twos to venues filled with thousands, we are unashamedly proclaiming Jesus. This is more than a job. We're born for this. We're called to this. To every tongue, race, face, and nation, we are community transformation, equipping identity proclamation. We are conveying the gospel with word and action, transforming lives, calling the next generation to rise. We are the message.
Okay, maybe has anyone not seen that video before? Okay, maybe that was for you to see it, because there's another video that I meant to play, not that one. This is the 30-year video, so we'll watch this. It's a little bit longer, but we'll watch this because it sets up what I'm going to say. See him doing a new thing, one, yeah.
Our calling is Manchester's young people. That's the vision of this band, to see revival break out amongst them. see thousands of teenagers come to Christ.
I can promise you that if you give your life to Jesus and you mean it, you will be set free from all the stuff that's messing you up.
Working for God is the most amazing thing you could ever do with your life. It's an amazing life to live.
We're not special, but God has given us an open door because we've got a big heart. We're not special, but God has given us an open door because we've got a big heart.
We'll have one more try, and if not, we'll leave that one. Talk amongst yourselves. Do you know what? Just leave that one. It's okay. So as part of that video, it talks about Isaiah 43, which is one of the touchstone scriptures of the message. It says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wasteland. The wild animals honor me, the jackals and the owls, because I provide water in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland to give drink to my people, my chosen, the people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise." You know, over the years of the message, we've been willing to lay things down. And we've got to be willing to lay things down sometimes. I don't think it's a failure issue. I think sometimes it's a God's timing issue for the message, but for us as individuals too. And I think we need to be willing to see the new thing. And that's not an indecisive issue. You know, we went from doing schools work to doing all this other stuff. It's not an indecisive issue. It's a perceiving and seeing what God's doing issue. And it's the same for us in our lives. Sometimes we get stuck in what we've always known, but actually God's calling us to do a new thing. Sometimes a thing that we've said we'll never do. I've been there where I've said, I'll never do that. And I've stopped saying it to God because every time I say it, it's almost like he's laughing in the background and saying, watch it. We all struggle with change. Or I don't know about you, but I often do. But God's a God who is active, moving and calling us to look to him and trust him as he moves. Often it can feel like a blindfolded follow my leader where we're waiting to be blindsided by a branch. You know, when we're following God, sometimes we just don't know what to expect. But when we give it over to him, we know that we can trust him with his plan. It says the message has been willing to do these things that we've seen growth. And had the message sat back, would still have probably been a schools ministry in Manchester, which would have been great. You know, we would have been impacting young people in Manchester, and that would have been great. But we're a Jesus ministry. We're a What's Jesus Doing Now ministry, a reaching anyone and everyone to see heaven populated. And often there's new things that God's calling us to. We're a ministry where we allow God, we might make plans, but we allow God to guide our steps. And when it's time to let things go and when it's time to pick new things up, we're willing to do that. And I wonder whether personally in our own lives, we need to make sure we're doing the same, perceiving and seeing what God's doing and being willing to adapt, being willing to move when God calls us to move, even when it's uncomfortable, and being willing to step into what he's asking us to do, despite feeling unworthy or incapable. You know, if we're going to be directed by God, we need to be moving somewhere. So often I've met Christians who sit still, and they say to me, I'm waiting to hear from God. And I'm like, God's already spoken. God said, go and make disciples. Why are you sitting still waiting for a direction that is already given you? When you're in the car and moving already, it's so much easier for God to steer the steering wheel in another direction. But if you're sat still with a handbrake on, it's so much harder. We need to go and set off on the mission that he's called us to love him and to keep our eyes on him and to love others, going and making disciples. It's easy to take a detour when we're already on the road. And do you know what? Sometimes it is like we can make our plans, but God guides our steps. We might think we know we're going in the right direction, or we might think we're going in the right direction, and it's just a slight twist. I don't know if you've had them plot twists in life where you really think this is the way God's sending him in, and suddenly something comes in the way and you realise that he led you there to lead you somewhere else, and it's being willing to make those quick changes. Philippians 3 verse 12 says, "Not that I have already obtained this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." And he took hold of us to know him and to make him known. In that order. Because how can we make known somebody that we don't know? How can we invite people to follow somebody that we ourselves aren't willing to be led by? And I think too many Christians can be like that. Come and follow this person, and yet I'm not willing to be led by him because I've got my own plans. Loving Jesus, reading Bibles, all the good stuff, even telling people about him. But I've got my plans. And God's going to bless my plans rather than me being willing to take the detour for him. And years ago, I think I probably was in that place of, it's obviously, I choose where I live. I choose where I work. That's all normal stuff that we do. And yet maybe I saw where I live as a practical thing rather than a spiritual thing. And suddenly I realized, that moving into a new area was actually a spiritual thing. God could be calling me to live somewhere that I never expected to live, and that's what he did. How can we take people to places that we've not been? How can we call people to a life laid down for Jesus if we're not willing to lay our lives down? We've got to be that example of people who are willing to lay down our lives for the one that we're calling people to. Being willing for him to lead us, saying yes to the unknown and yes to the challenges and yes to all that he's calling us to, even when we don't feel capable of doing the things that he's calling us to. I be the first person to say, I'm incapable. Do not give me a microphone. I will absolutely have a meltdown. 2 years ago, I still would have said that. Do not ask me to do anything like that. And yet God had different plans, and I'd already given him my yes, and I couldn't take it back. When he calls us, he gives us the gift that we need for the job that he's calling us to do. So if you've got a call on your life and you're like, I know that that's what God said, but that is so not me. Believe me, I know it because I've been there for years. But God calls us, and not only does he give the gift, but he gives us the grace for the gift. And he's given me grace in abundance for what I'm doing right now, and I've needed it because there's so many people who I need loads of grace for. When we hear God speak and when we step into what he's calling us to, he changes our hearts. So often we can see what God's calling us to, but we're like, actually, I know that this is what you're saying, but this isn't my heart. I don't really want to do this. But, as we step into it and as we step into his plans for our life, there's something unlocks in us and our hearts change because he knows that the plans that he's put in our lives, the plans that he's laid out for us, he knows we're going to be so much more fulfilled when we step into that. And sometimes it's the unknown for us and we don't know that we're going to experience that. And I've experienced it. As we go and we feel unworthy, he fills us with everything we need. I was 12 years old in church. I was brought up by Christian parents, only just Christians. They got married the year after I was born, and then my mum became a Christian at Billy Graham at Anfield, I think. And I was 12 years old, and I loved Jesus, and I was in church, and I was sat on the chair, and I had the word multitudes going around my head, and it wasn't a word that I would ever be thinking about. And I had this word multitudes, and this guy from the front, it was like my worst nightmare because I wasn't a confident child, and it was my worst nightmare because this guy said, can you come up? And I was like, oh my goodness, not me. And I walked up to the front because although I was shy, I was also quite obedient, and I walked up to the front and he said, can I check that this is recorded? And he said, you'll stand in a place I've appointed for you, and you won't stand there alone, but you'll stand with one with the same call and the same vision. And together you'll serve me in that place, for I've prepared a people for you. I'm going to prepare you for that hour. And as you stand in that place, you'll preach my gospel, and multitudes will bow the knee before Jesus. I'll be honest, like the word was heavy because the word multitudes was in it. And I've been thinking of the word multitudes. And I've never forgotten that prophecy. What I did that day is I said, God, if that's real, if that's from you, then you can have it back. Not in a horrible way, not in a, I don't want it. It was, God, you can have it back, because if that's from you, you're going to need to make it happen. Because I'm not going to push to be someone who preaches. I'm not going to push to be someone who sees multitudes. It's just not me naturally. So you've got my yes for whatever you're calling me to, but I'm going to give you your plans back and you can work that out. And right the way through my life, I've done that, and I've said the same to God. Multiple times, I've said to God, I know that was from you, or I really believe that was from you, but I'm giving it you back again. God, if you need to open any doors, would you open the doors? Because I'm not going to push myself for anything. And I believe God's been so faithful in that. I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but it was my way of saying, God, I only want it if it's yours. Because it petrified me, I'll be honest. And it's been a huge journey, and it's not all been plain sailing. In John 16:33, it says that in this life we'll have struggles, but in Him we can have peace. I remember as a child, and I was when I was young, maybe about 8 years old, I would sit and I would go under the stairs. I still to this day, I'm 44, I still love little cubby holes. I nearly bought a house because it had a cubby hole in the wall, because I'm like, my little cubby hole to go and read my Bible. Because when I was a kid, I used to go under the stairs. It wasn't a nice little cubby hole. It was full of stinking trainers and bags. We were a family of four kids. We didn't have much money. And I used to go and hide to get some space, and I would hide with my torch and my Bible, and I would read my Bible under the stairs until one day I came home, my dad had emptied it all out and put a little cushion on the seat and put a lamp in there, and it became my little room. No one else was allowed to go in there. But I remember, I don't know if it was in that room when I said this, but I remember because I'd heard someone say, God won't give you more than you can handle. And I thought, great, here's my list, God, of what I can't handle. And I gave God my list of all the things that He couldn't give to me, because that would be too much. And then as I got older, I realised that life does give us more than we can handle. He allows us to face things that we can't handle, but He's also given us Him. And it's in that place of more than we can handle that we get to depend on Him. And I believe that over the years, I've had more than I can handle, and it's in that place that I've been able to depend on Him and really rely on Him to get through, taking on His strength, and taking on His peace, and taking on His comfort, and journeying with Him in forgiveness that I could never have done on my own, and finding His joy as I go. Being 12 years old and having that prophecy, it could be so easy to look at that and wait for God to bring it to pass, sit back and wait. But I wouldn't be ready, because I believe that God needed me to go through some of those things to get to where I am today, for Him to be able to use me in the way He's using me today, to be able to speak into people's lives today in the way that we need to speak into people's lives. But it's as we set our hearts on Him, and as we set our hearts on heaven and face life's challenges and deal with the pain and grieving of life, because we can't pretend that because we've got God with us and all the comfort and all the strength and all the peace that He offers, that it's not painful, because it is. But it's there. We keep our eyes on Him and keep moving with our eyes fixed on Him, despite anything. You know, between the age of 12 and 44, I can tell you multiple things that I've had to face that have been really difficult and could easily have thrown me off track. But God has been faithful to journey with me in a way that I never expected. And, I would never wish any of that stuff upon me. If you asked me, could I take some of that stuff away? Absolutely, I would change it tomorrow. But would I change the God that I've got to know in it? Absolutely not. Because it's in those moments that you get to know God in a new way. It's in those painful moments that God becomes so much more real, and we become so much more dependent on God. And sometimes we can try and shout our way out of situations. Maybe people in this room, you've got stuff going on and you're screaming at God, get me out, instead of saying, God, what are you teaching me? And sometimes God wants to get us out, and sometimes that's right to pray, but sometimes even when we're praying that, we need to also be praying, God, I need to be dependent on you. What are you teaching me in this that I'm going through? On the 16th of January 2010, I answered a 6 a.m. call that told me that my brother had been murdered. I was on my own as a single parent at the time, and I can't describe the heartache that followed that. Nobody prepares you for that stuff. And it was the first time I ever knew that heartache wasn't just a word. I'd used it flippantly probably sometimes, and then suddenly the word became a feeling. And I stood in a mortuary and my heart ached for my brother, my friend. Sorry, don't usually get emotional. But over the coming weeks of police and papers and everything else in my house, I'd given up my bed to my parents who were living in Spain at the time. And I used to lay on an airbed in my dining room every night, and I'd listen to the pain of the house, and I'd wonder who it is that's crying now. But you know what? I experienced God in them moments like never before. Sorry, didn't expect to get so emotional. I've shared this loads of times. All God got was tears. But you know what? I felt God closer than I've ever felt him before. So unexpected, sorry. Because the reality was that God couldn't fix it. There was no prayer to pray because God couldn't fix it, and I would lie there and I'd just say, God, I'm not angry with you. I've just got no words. I don't know what to pray. And the next day, one of the following days, I got up and I got my journal out. And I just started to write in my journal. Once again, it's time to take hold of the hand of the one who created me and say yes to moving forwards despite everything within me screaming no. Because sometimes we've just got to get a grip of him. Sometimes we've just got to grit our teeth and move forwards. Because God's got so much more for us. And even in the pain of the past, we still want to be moving forwards and looking to the future. I'm not living in the past. Still pain of the past, but I can't live in the past because the future's precious too. Now, the past was precious, but the future's precious. And God gives us the grace and the patience as we choose to journey with him. But we've got to make that decision. We can't sit back and wallow in what's been going on. Yes, grieve. Yeah, don't believe me. I've grieved like never before. But God's calling us on with him because we've got a job to do and we've got heaven to populate and we've got a plan and a purpose that doesn't stop when the bad stuff happens. We've seen the message trust grow over 30 years, and all that God has done is we've given him our yes. And right now, as I've given that word back to God that he spoke over me at 12 years old, without pushing, despite fear, despite all sorts of rubbish, despite feeling incapable of what God was calling me to do, trusting him to equip me when he needs to give me grace for anything he puts in front of me. I find myself at 44 years old, living in that prophecy from 12 years old. And it's just mind-blowing. I'll be honest, I've sat and I've looked at what's going on in our community and my mind has been blown because God has been at work. It's been the most incredible couple of years of my life as I've seen the growth and salvation, as our community groceries have grown to 45,000 member families. Is our first grocery in Wythenshawe, which has got at least 4,000 families, has seen hundreds, if not thousands, come to Christ over the past couple of years. We launched our community grocery, the first one in Wythenshawe in September 2020. By the May 2021, we'd seen 200 people make decisions. We didn't even have the church. It was COVID. I think maybe some of them prolonged their time in the shop because they wanted to get out of the house. But 200 people made decisions and were asking us for Sunday church. We were talking to them about the church that was meeting in our building coming back. But then the church decided they weren't coming back. And I'll never forget the day as I sat in Andy's office and we prayed, like, what are we going to do? Again, like other times before, what are we going to do, God? What is it you're saying? Do we point these people to churches around Manchester? Do we give them a leaflet with all the different churches that they could go to? But yet we knew that the people had made our building their home. We knew that we would lose people if we sent them to different places. And we knew that they'd connected with us, which meant that they wouldn't want someone else to be leading them. And so in that moment, as we prayed, I can honestly say I've never felt a level of spiritual excitement like it, because I realised that there's prophecies over the message, there's prophecies over Andy, and there's the prophecy over me that was starting to come to pass. And I realised that God was at work, and it was an incredible feeling to have a church. We launched a church in July 2021 based on salvation. And on the first week, we had 140 people turn up. Now, if you work in deprived communities, you'll know that people say they're going to come and then half the people don't turn up. And we didn't know if we'd end up with 10 people in this church on the Sunday morning. So we had 140 people, 80% of them were from the local council estate, brand new to church, really unchurched people, very broken people. And every week, we've seen salvation. Every month, we've seen baptisms happen. We see between 200 and 300 people in attendance every week and hundreds more coming midweek. I would say to someone, oh, I've not seen you in church for a few weeks, are you okay? And they said, oh, I came to church on Wednesday. Did you not know? I came to Bible study on Wednesday, or I came to this on Tuesday. And we have groups running throughout the week, and rightly so, people don't just see Sunday as church, but they see churches coming to our building and getting prayer and meeting with people. We've got some incredible stories of God at work, and we're just going to show you this little testimony video that I had made a few months back that just shares a few little snippets of some of the testimonies of people from our church.
Ever since then, I felt like a massive pressure and like weights just lifted right off my shoulders. You know? Jesus is the biggest cure.
The fellowship, because I'd lost all my family, I regained a massive big family. So thank you.
So I went to the youth group on Monday, and two of my mates, they had a bad arm, and I prayed for them, and somehow God made it get awfully better. As Henry was very proud, and then I prayed for another person after, and his hand got better. So yeah.
I've never felt such peace that I can't even explain. My father has passed away 2 weeks ago on Friday, and I feel joy, I feel peace. I've been in church ever since. I was there a week before when he had the accident. But yeah, just don't play with God, just give him the role in your life. Deny yourself, you know, he died for us, he sacrificed himself for us, so if you sacrifice things in your life, then big changes happen.
I have sister, but I turned to alcohol a lot last year, and we're on drugs as well. Then within the last 2 or 3 months, I've not touched a drop of alcohol.
Isn't that amazing? That's amazing.
Not seen my sister for so long, apart from a funeral we had to attend, sadly. And now it's just brought us so close together. It's unreal. Me, my sister, and my mother, considerably from an animal, like I said. But me and my mum and my sister see each other every day now, and we always call each other.
Isn't that incredible? We were sat here talking before, and Claire was saying how God's brought love back into a family. Isn't that beautiful?
Christian is I bus at Holly Edge Park, and I was playing at Holly Edge Park once, and then my mates told me that there's a bus at Holly Edge Park, and I came and I saw everyone, and I thought I've got to come to the church because God's going to be next to me where I am.
I've said before, my daughter brought me along to one of the fun days, then I started volunteering, and I just felt like I found a new family. I found somewhere where I get a lot of support, and it's everyone here from the grocery who's introduced me to God and showed me the way. But I'm in absolute awe of everyone here who has become a Christian. I think it's an amazing thing to do. And yeah, I can't wait to join the family.
It's a strange one because I said to Sam one day, I said, I think when we started talking in the cafe, and just sort of said, I feel a lot clearer. My mind doesn't feel as hectic as it was. I just don't feel like there's this massive weight on my shoulders of having to control everything. It's a very weird feeling to get used to, not having to worry about things, especially when things go wrong. And you're like, oh, alright, what will be, God's got me, so it's a nice feeling.
Last year I gave my life to Jesus, and since I gave my life to Jesus I've got a sudden calmness in the heart, and I can't explain it, I just feel totally different.
So Jesus, today we receive.
I was in a bad place, and I would describe it as hell, and he let me pull me out. I was surrounded by good people. I could have been surrounded by idiots, and when the time was needed, good people was put around me.
You haven't spoken out in a long time. Drink this.
My teachers understand me more, my mum understands me more, and most importantly, I'm getting a better connection with those around me. I feel like I've just made new friends, family, and people I can trust.
I used to be real naughty, and obviously I used to hit teachers, I used to run around swearing, I used to skip lessons, I used to just get in trouble a lot of time. Robert Tyson started telling me to come to church, and when I started coming to church I felt relieved. I felt like every time I try to do something bad, God tells me I think that decision is wrong, I have to make a new decision.
I love it. I love seeing it again. And I love the song that goes behind that. You're not done with me. You're doing a new thing. And that's for these people who've seen God do something new, but also for us. He's not done with us. He's doing something new. And even today, maybe he's calling you to something. Maybe he's reminding you of something that he's said to you in the past. But we've got so many stories. That's just a few of them. I told you a little bit on Friday night about Sam. But for those of you, there was quite a few of you who weren't there on Friday night. Sam is a lady who came to the grocery in about the February 2021. And she was that low that her partner had just died by suicide. He'd jumped off a bridge, and she was that low that she could hardly speak. Jane met her, and she'd taken herself off the heart transplant list because she said it's a waste of a heart. She's only 40, she's got a congenital heart condition. And she started volunteering a day a week, and she said to us, it's the only thing that gets me out of bed. So Jane said to her, why don't you volunteer more then? So she did, and she started to volunteer more and more. And then she came to church, she gave her life to Jesus. And a month later, we did baptisms for the first time, and she was one of the first people we baptised. And she came to us and she said, do you know what? I need to tell you, I've put myself back on the heart transplant list because I've now found a reason to live. 7 months ago, Sam went into Newcastle Hospital on the urgent list for a new heart. And about 7 weeks ago, she got her... Was it 7 weeks? About 6 weeks ago, she got a new heart. And it didn't quite take, and it's been a hugely rocky road. She's been on machines and in an induced coma for a long while. And as I arrived at Awaken, a sister had been in touch, and she said, Sam's woke up. She's got a trachea, she can't speak to you, but she wants a FaceTime. And as I arrived, the timing was just ridiculous, because as I arrived at Awaken and we're at the gates and the other girls are trying to tell the gate people that we're here and what we were here for, I've got Sam on FaceTime, literally just blowing kisses with her mouth because she can't do anything else. And we got to pray for her because she's now awake and she's on a road to recovery. She's got a long road, but do you know what? She found life in Jesus. And she's found life in life as well. And I know that God's going to use her going forwards. We've got a guy called Andrew who now works for us, actually. He came into the message to a fun day. And he said he came in, he put a Facebook post on a bit ago, and he said, I came into this place broken and struggling with a drug habit. And I'm now working here. And I've seen Jesus work in my life and work in so many other people's lives. One day, Andrew joined the Eden team as well. And one day, he went on a prayer walk around the community. And they passed his gran's house. Now, Andrew was brought up a lot by his gran rather than his mum. And he lived with his gran at the time. And they were passing her house. And they said, let's stop outside your gran's house and pray for her. That night when he went home, his gran had managed to get herself onto YouTube, something that she can't do, and managed to find Alpha. When he asked her how she'd done it, she didn't know. That night he was able to lead his gran to Jesus. And she died a few months later, and I had the pleasure of doing a funeral and was able to say to his family, we know where she's gone. You know, and there's a hope of heaven. And it was amazing. We've actually had a few funerals. Something they didn't tell me and something I didn't think about is that when you sign up to lead a church, you also sign up to weddings and funerals. Someone asked us to do a wedding that found me and Andy in Andy's office, sat there Googling how to do a wedding. What are you meant to say? I think Andy told the statistic about how many wives murder the husbands. I don't think that's quite the right thing to say at a wedding, but I think that's the one he gave. And then it was funeral time, Andrew's nan's funeral, and then Austin's dad's funeral. He mentioned it on there. And I met with Austin, and he said, I really, really want my dad to have his funeral at the Message Church. And it's on a Wednesday. It's an all-staff day. Our car park is very full. The grocery's open. And I was like, I don't know if we can do it. And he said, I really, really want it at the Message Church. Is there any way you can make it happen? And so I chatted to the right people. And there may have been some reluctance. And they said, OK, we've got a plan. We can do the funeral at the Message Church on our Message staff site. And I went back to them and I sat down in the cafe. And these two guys are really chaotic. So I can be in the middle of talking to them and trying to learn about their dad so I could write the eulogy. And at the same time, they're picking up the phone and swearing down the phone at the sister. Like, that's the type of people you're working with. And I sat down in the cafe and I said, OK, I've worked it out. We can have the funeral here. And he went, amazing. Where do we put the horses? I was like, you didn't tell me there were any horses. And we managed to make it work. And on that day, these two black horses with a massive horse-drawn carriage came into the grounds. And I stood at the front of the church. And I'm there in my black dress, because that's what you wear for funerals, and all these gangsters starts walking in. I'm not joking you, 200 people, and 2/3 of them look like gangsters. Hats on, glasses, chains, and I'm stood there thinking, you think I know what I'm doing? And I led this funeral. And do you know what? It was one of the most special things I've ever done, as I was able to walk them through their grief, be able to bring to life who their dad was and make them laugh about his stories. I'd never met their dad, but was able to bring that to life and let them laugh, and be able to journey with them in the grieving a little bit and point them to Jesus and the hope of heaven, because his dad had made a decision not that long before. Following that funeral, and I'd been meeting with the funeral director, following that funeral, 3 ladies came to church, or 4 ladies came to church. And I noticed these ladies were new, but I didn't know who they were. And at the end of the service, someone came up to me and they said, these ladies are here to see you about a funeral. Now, we'd had a lady from the church who used to come every now and again, who was poorly, and she passed away. And they came to me at the end and they said, we came to church to talk about the funeral, but what the heck has just happened to us? Something's happened. And I got to talk to them about the fact that they just accepted Jesus into their life, and that's what they were feeling. And I went on to do that funeral, and something really special happened. So that funeral was something that we had at the church again on our site, but then over at the Crem. Same funeral director who did it. In between doing the first funeral and the second funeral, the funeral director attended church and became a Christian. So the second funeral, I'm working with this funeral director who's come to faith, and I'm able to pray in the funeral house with the family who have all just come to faith too. It was ridiculous. It was incredible. And I was in the Crem doing this funeral, and I said to the family, like, we're going to play, they wanted, In My Father's House There's a Place for You. They wanted that as the committal song. And so I said, why don't we play it over twice, so that the first time your family can hear it, the family who aren't Christians can hear the words, and then we'll play it again for the curtains. And they said, yeah. So we played it once, and these brand new Christians at the front worshipping in this Crem. And the song stopped, and it didn't loop. And I'm stood like this, and the curtains were open. And I'm thinking, what the heck do I do? Because I can't just close the curtains. It's quite an important moment. I looked back, and the funeral director said, it's broken. And so I thought, I'll pause with a prayer. And I was so grateful for my multitasking skills, because in the back of my mind, I'm going, what do I do? What do I do? And from my mouth, I'm saying, God, thank you for this day. And as I stopped praying, I just turned round. And I just effectively spoke to Sheila and commissioned her to go and be with Jesus. Go and walk the streets of gold. Go and save us a place until we get there. It's time to go and be with Jesus. And as I ended what I was saying, the family started to stand one by one, and they started to repeat what I'd said. There'd be one over there saying, go and be with Jesus, Sheila. See you soon, Mum. Save us a place. And the cheering started and the clapping started, and it was the most precious moment as we cheered her into heaven. And the daughter rang me later that day, and she said, Danielle, what the F is happening? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, my family are all talking about God and church. Something happened at that funeral, and they all want to know what's going on. And we've got to journey with that family in a special way. Story after story of God at work. Edgar was a guy who came to me on one of our prayer days. He's a refugee from Nicaragua, and they'd fled over the mountains, and they got a plane over to England, and they were staying in a hotel and round the corner from our grocery, and they joined our grocery, and then they became Christians, and they joined the church. And he came to me one prayer day, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, Danielle, I've been searching for something all my life, and I came to England and I found Jesus. I'm ready to surrender everything to him now. Would you baptize me? And we got to baptize Edgar. We had a guy come into church called Rob, who was an older guy who'd been in the Anglican church for years, ministering in the Anglican church. And he texted me one morning, and he said, Danielle, he said, I've known it in my head, but I've never known it in my heart. I only accepted Jesus when I came to church, and I want to be baptized. And this is a guy who's led others, and yet he didn't know Jesus for himself. He said, now I know the person that I follow, rather than just knowing him in my head. It's story after story of God at work, and it's incredible. Living a life in all of its fullness first means giving our lives fully back to him and allowing him to work out his plans and purposes. Because we can have great plans, but they're never as good as his. Saved to serve God, not just for access to heaven, but to make sure that others get there too, and to fulfill the call that he's put on our lives. It's what we call people to when we call them to come and be followers of Jesus. And it's what we need ourselves to do too, a life laid down for him. You know, maybe this afternoon we've said about plans that you've got. Maybe there's plans that you need to offer back to God. You know, when you offer your plans back to God, he doesn't just take it away. He'll either give it you back and say, yes, that's my plan too, or he'll give it you back and say, I've got better. Maybe there's something that God's called you to that you just need to talk to him about this afternoon. So I'm going to pray. God, I thank you for this time. I thank you that you're at work. I thank you that you're patient with us when we don't get it right. I thank you that you've got loads of grace for us. And I thank you, God, that you give us yourself. That whatever we face and whatever challenges we feel your call gives to us, God, you've given us everything that we need. So I pray that every person around this room will know the call of God on their lives. God, I pray that every person around this room will just this afternoon be... will just highlight stuff in their life, God. Maybe past dreams that have gone to one side. Maybe there's stuff you're teaching them in this season. And God, we say this afternoon, God, we give you your plans back and we say, God, have your way. Amen. You know, there's so much going on. I'm going to finish a little bit early because in case anyone's got any questions and you want to come and ask, then there's a bit of time for that before the next seminar starts. But there's so much going on at the message. You heard a little bit about what's going on, and I personally have seen God do incredible things. And while we're at Awaken, we've been asking people to come along and support us. And you know what? It is financial support monthly. We do ask for that because we need it, because we can't grow without it. But it's also that when people financially support, often they will get behind that with prayer. And the prayer is desperately needed. You've got an information leaflet on your seat that talks about the work of the message, a bit about what I've said. It's got a giving form in the back. If you can stand with us before you leave this seminar, it would be absolutely amazing. You know what? We have people who give £5 a month. In fact, I had someone sign up for £2 a month the other day. We have people who give £5 a month. We have people who give £1,000 a month. It's not about equal amounts. It's about just standing with us to see God reach more lives than ever before. And we would love you to be able to do that. If you're able to do that this weekend, we've got a special offer. So when we first brought out these partner packs, they came out and a guy designed them, and they were like a school book bag. And they were awful. And so we got a grip of it and we decided to change them. And we've got these tote bags, which I actually love and I use myself. This tote bag, when you sign up to give a gift to the message of any amount a month, you get this bag full of books and resources. It's got Andy's brand new hardback Burning Heart book, which is all about 1 Corinthians. The hardback is only available with these partner packs. There's also another of Andy's books, Hope Unleashed, another book made by one of our other partners. There's a QR code with a load of talks from the Message Trust on there too, and a CD, if anyone has a CD player still. I don't, but maybe somebody does. And also for this weekend, if you sign up, you also get a special edition Message coffee cup, which I promised Andy would be sold with the partner packs. He wasn't convinced. I think they're great. When you sign up and you get this cup, you also get your first coffee in it free, and then 10% off your coffees for the rest of the time you're with us. So if you're interested, if you can think about standing with us, we'd be so grateful. Like I say, it's not about equal amounts. It's just about people standing with us financially and praying for us, because we so need it, because God is at work. So thank you for having me with you, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.